Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Introduction. Have you ever found yourself in a quiet moment, maybe waiting for a friend, or standing in line for a coffee, and without even thinking, your hand reaches for your phone? It's almost a reflex, isn't it? A quick scroll, a tap, a refresh. And then you look up, and you realize you weren't even bored. You were just empty for a second. And that emptiness felt uncomfortable. In 2016, a brilliant writer named Andrew Sullivan published a powerful essay in New York Magazine. He was one of the world's most influential bloggers, a pioneer of online commentary. But he had reached a breaking point. The title of his essay was, "I Used to Be a Human Being." He described how the constant, endless stream of news, gossip, and images had turned him into a manic information addict. It broke him, he said. And it might break you too. That feeling, that sense of being broken by the very tools that promise to connect us, is at the heart of the book we're exploring today. Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism isn't just another book with tips on how to use your phone less. It's a profound, deeply researched, and surprisingly hopeful guide to reclaiming your life from the forces that are trying to steal your attention. Cal Newport is an interesting guide for this journey. He's a computer science professor at Georgetown University, a man who lives at the cutting edge of technology. But he's also famously absent from social media. He's never had a Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram account. This gives him a unique perspective, not as a critic who hates technology, but as an expert who wants to use it on his own terms. This book has sold hundreds of thousands of copies and has been translated into dozens of languages because it taps into a universal feeling, the sense that we've lost control. We feel exhausted, anxious, and distracted, and we have a nagging suspicion that our digital lives are to blame. So, what if you could change that? What if you could transform your relationship with technology, not by abandoning it, but by mastering it? By the end of our time together today, you will understand the hidden psychology that makes your devices so addictive, and you will have a clear, step-by-step plan to rebuild your digital life from the ground up, one built on your values, not the business models of Silicon Valley. This isn't about giving up technology, it's about learning to live better with less of it. Book summary. Let's start with a question that might feel a little uncomfortable. Do you remember signing a contract that said you agreed to check your phone 85 times a day? Or that you would spend nearly 2 hours every single day on social media and messaging apps? Of course not. Nobody did. And yet, for so many of us, that's where we've ended up. We didn't sign up for this world, we just sort of stumbled into it. Think back to the beginning. When Facebook first appeared in 2004, it was just a novelty, a digital version of a college yearbook. The idea wasn't to change the world, it was to look up who your friends were dating. When the first iPhone came out in 2007, Steve Jobs spent most of his presentation talking about how it was a great iPod that could also make phone calls. The killer app, he said, was making calls. There was no app store, no notifications, no endless feeds. We adopted these tools for small, simple reasons. We wanted to see baby pictures from a cousin across the country, or we didn't want to carry both a phone and an iPod. But somewhere along the way, these minor conveniences colonized the very center of our lives. We woke up one day to find that we were living in a state of constant, frenzied distraction, and we felt a deep sense of unease. Not because these tools were useless, but because we were losing our autonomy. The question is, how did this happen? It's not because we're weak-willed. The truth is, we've been fighting a lopsided arms race we didn't even know we were in. In 2017, the comedian Bill Maher looked into the camera on his show and said something that sent shockwaves through the tech world. He said the leaders of social media need to stop pretending they're friendly nerd gods building a better world and admit that they're just tobacco farmers in t-shirts selling an addictive product to children. It sounds harsh, but it was based on the testimony of Silicon Valley insiders who had started to speak out. People like Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, who held up a smartphone on the show 60 Minutes and called it a slot machine. He explained that every time you check your phone, you're pulling the lever on a slot machine to see what you got. Did someone like your post? Did you get a new follower? A new email? The rewards are unpredictable, and that unpredictability is the secret sauce of addiction. It triggers a release of dopamine in your brain, the same neurotransmitter involved in cravings. This isn't an accident. It's a design feature. It's called intermittent positive reinforcement, and it's a powerful psychological hook that app designers use to keep you coming back. Sean Parker, the first president of Facebook, admitted it himself. The whole thought process behind building these apps, he said, was, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? To do that, they needed to give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while. It's a social validation feedback loop, he explained, built by exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. There's a second force at play too, our deep, primal need for social approval. For our ancestors living in tribes, being socially accepted was a matter of life and death. Our brains are hardwired to care deeply about what others think of us. Technology companies have hijacked this instinct. Getting a like on Instagram feels like the tribe is showing you approval. Not getting feedback feels like a threat. So we feel an urgent need to constantly monitor our social standing, to check and recheck. So, if you feel like you've lost control over your technology, it's not your fault. You're not lazy or undisciplined. You're up against a multi-billion-dollar industry that is actively working to undermine your autonomy. Billions of dollars have been invested to make this outcome inevitable. Faced with this reality, what do most of us do? We try little hacks. We turn off notifications. We declare a digital Sabbath on Sundays. We promise to be more mindful, but Cal Newport argues that these small tweaks are like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. They're not enough. The forces against us are too powerful for an ad hoc approach to succeed. What we need, he says, is not a new set of tips, but a new philosophy. A philosophy he calls digital minimalism. Digital minimalism is defined as a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value, and then happily miss out on everything else. Let that sink in for a moment. Happily miss out on everything else. This is the opposite of the default mindset most of us have, which is a kind of digital maximalism. The maximalist lives in fear of missing out. They believe that any potential benefit, no matter how small, is a good enough reason to adopt a new technology. They ask, what if I miss something important? The minimalist asks a different question. They ask, is this the best way to support my values? A minimalist doesn't just look at the benefits of a new app, they look at the costs. And the primary cost, Newport reminds us, is our life. He draws on the wisdom of Henry David Thoreau, who famously wrote, "The cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life which is required to be exchanged for it." If you spend 10 hours a week on Twitter, you need to ask yourself, are the occasional interesting links and connections you find there worth 10 hours of your life? Or could you get similar benefits by, say, attending one interesting talk a month and talking to 3 new people? That would only cost a few hours, leaving you with a surplus of time to invest in things that truly matter. Digital minimalists aren't afraid of missing out on small things, because they're terrified of diminishing the big things they know for sure make life good. So what does this look like in practice? Newport shares stories of people who have embraced this philosophy. There's Tyler, who quit all social media. A year later, he was exercising regularly, reading 3 to 4 books a month, learning the ukulele, and was closer than ever to his wife and kids. He even got a promotion at work. There's Adam, a small business owner who was worried about the example he was setting for his kids. So he got rid of his smartphone and replaced it with a basic flip phone. It made texting harder, but teaching his kids that life exists beyond a screen was far more valuable to him than typing speed. And it's not always about quitting things entirely. It's about being intentional. Minimalists are masters of optimization. They strip away the distracting features of a service to get to the value. For example, Karina, a student, needed to use a Facebook group for her organization. So she unfriended everyone except the 14 people on her council. Her newsfeed is now empty. She can use the group to coordinate, but she isn't sucked into the platform's attention traps. This is the core of the philosophy, working backward from your deepest values to your technology choices, transforming these tools from a source of distraction into a source of support for a life well lived. So, how do you become a digital minimalist? You can't just dip your toe in the water. Newport recommends a radical, rapid transformation. A process he calls the digital declutter. The digital declutter is a 30-day reset. Here's how it works. First, you put aside a 30-day period where you take a break from all optional technologies in your life. Optional means any technology whose temporary removal won't harm or significantly disrupt your professional or personal life. So, you can't stop checking your work email. But social media, news websites, video games, streaming services? For most people, these are optional. The goal is to be aggressive. Don't confuse convenient with critical. Yes, it might be inconvenient to not have Facebook for a month, but it's unlikely to cause real harm. The second step, and this is crucial, is to use this 30-day break to rediscover what you actually enjoy doing. This isn't about sitting around feeling bored. It's about actively exploring high-quality alternatives to digital distraction. You have to fill the void. Take walks, read books, learn an instrument, volunteer in your community, have actual conversations with friends. Finally, at the end of the 30 days, you reintroduce technology, but you do it from a blank slate. For each technology you consider bringing back, you have to ask 3 questions. 1. Does this technology serve something I deeply value? Not, does it offer some benefit, but does it serve a deep value? 2. Is this technology the best way to serve this value? Maybe Instagram helps you keep up with your cousin's baby, but is it the best way? Or would a monthly phone call be far more meaningful? 3. If it passes those 2 tests, how will I use this technology in a way that maximizes its value and minimizes its harm? This means setting up strict rules for yourself, like only checking Facebook on your computer on Saturday mornings. Newport ran an experiment with over 1,600 people who went through this process. The results were transformative. People were shocked at how much of their digital life was just reflexive, compulsive behavior. When they came out the other side, they had a streamlined, intentional digital life that felt, as they put it, right. But this transformation goes deeper than just cleaning up your phone's home screen. It forces you to rebuild the foundations of your life. The rest of the book explores the practices that help you build a sustainable minimalist lifestyle, focusing on 3 key areas: solitude, relationships, and leisure. Let's start with solitude. In the summers of the 1860s, during the darkest days of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln would escape the chaos of the White House. He would commute by horseback to a quiet, Gothic-style cottage on a hill overlooking Washington, D.C. The White House was a whirlwind of duty and distraction, with visitors constantly camped outside his door. But the cottage offered him something priceless: time and space to think. It was here, often alone, that he wrestled with the Emancipation Proclamation and refined the words that would become the Gettysburg Address. We can say, with only slight exaggeration, that solitude helped save the nation. Newport argues that we all need regular doses of solitude. But he offers a precise definition. Solitude is not about being physically alone, it's about being free from input from other minds. You can be in a crowded coffee shop and still experience solitude, as long as your mind is left alone with its own thoughts. But you can be in a quiet room and have solitude banished by a quick glance at your phone. Why is this so important? Because it's in these moments that we clarify hard problems, regulate our emotions, and build moral courage. It's where we come to understand ourselves. The problem is, for the first time in human history, it's possible to completely banish solitude from our lives. That little device in our pocket is a constant portal to other minds. At the slightest hint of boredom, we can pull it out and get a satisfying dose of distraction. Newport calls this state solitude deprivation, and it's having devastating consequences. He points to the work of psychologist Jean Twenge, who has studied generational trends for decades. Around 2012, she noticed a terrifying, sudden spike in rates of teen depression, anxiety, and suicide. The timing corresponded exactly to the moment when smartphone ownership became ubiquitous among young people. This generation, the first to grow up constantly connected, is on the brink of the worst mental health crisis in decades. When you eliminate solitude, you lose the ability to process and make sense of your own emotions. Simply put, humans are not wired to be constantly wired. So, what can we do? We need to intentionally inject solitude back into our lives. Newport suggests simple but powerful practices. Try leaving your phone at home sometimes. You'll realize that the urgency you feel to always have it is mostly an illusion. Take long walks, alone, without headphones. Nietzsche once wrote, "Only thoughts reached by walking have value." Walking is a fantastic source of solitude. Or try writing letters to yourself in a journal. The act of writing forces you to organize your thoughts and gain clarity. The second pillar of a minimalist life is reclaiming real human connection. Aristotle famously said that man is a social animal. Modern neuroscience has proven him right in ways he couldn't have imagined. Our brains, when they're at rest, default to thinking about our social lives. We are wired for rich, complex, face-to-face interaction. We process a flood of information from body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. The problem with most digital communication, text messages, comments, likes, is that it's a very low bandwidth, stripped-down version of what our brains evolved to handle. MIT professor Sherry Turkle calls this connection as opposed to conversation. She says that face-to-face conversation is the most humanizing thing we do. It's where we learn empathy. The danger is that we're replacing high-value conversation with low-value connection. Studies show a tragic paradox. The more time people spend connecting on social media, the lonelier they feel. The small boost you get from a like cannot compensate for the huge loss you experience by no longer spending real time with that friend. Newport proposes a radical philosophy: conversation-centric communication. It argues that real conversation, face-to-face or on the phone, is the only form of interaction that truly counts toward maintaining a relationship. Everything else, like texting and social media, is just for logistics, setting up conversations or sharing practical information. This requires a fundamental shift. You have to stop clicking like. You have to stop leaving shallow comments like "so cool." These trivial interactions teach your brain that connection is a reasonable substitute for conversation. If a friendship is important, let the desire to comment on a baby picture motivate you to actually call or visit. He also suggests consolidating your texting. Keep your phone on Do Not Disturb by default and check your messages at scheduled times, like email. This makes you less available for meandering, low-quality text chats, which paradoxically strengthens your relationships by motivating you and your friends to seek out real conversation to fill the void. The final pillar is reclaiming leisure. Aristotle argued that a good life requires activities that serve no other purpose than the joy of the activity itself. Newport calls this high-quality leisure. The problem today is that we have a void in our lives where these activities used to be. We fill that void with the easiest, lowest quality option available, our screens. Mindless swiping and tapping becomes our default way to pass the time. To succeed as a minimalist, you must replace this digital noise with something better. He offers 3 lessons for high-quality leisure. Lesson 1. Prioritize demanding activity over passive consumption. He points to people in the financial independence movement, like Mr. Money Mustache, who with endless free time, choose to spend it on strenuous projects like building and renovating. This is the Bennett principle, named after Arnold Bennett, who argued that expending energy in your leisure time can actually leave you feeling more energized, not less. Lesson 2. Use skills to produce valuable things in the physical world. This is the world of craft. Whether it's knitting a sweater, fixing an engine, or playing a guitar, applying skill to create something tangible provides a deep, primal satisfaction that a screen cannot replicate. It gives you an unambiguous source of self-worth. You can simply point to it and say, "I made that." Lesson 3. Seek activities that require real-world, structured social interactions. Think of the explosive popularity of board game cafes, CrossFit boxes, and volunteer groups. These activities provide a structure, rules, goals, insider jargon, that paradoxically enables richer, more intense, and more satisfying social experiences. Putting all of this together, embracing solitude, prioritizing conversation, and cultivating high-quality leisure, is an act of resistance. It's a declaration that your time and your attention are your own. The business model of the attention economy is simple. Your time equals their money. Facebook, Google, and others are in a race to extract as many minutes of your life as possible. To win this fight, you have to be strategic. Newport offers a final set of practices for what he calls the attention resistance. Delete social media apps from your phone. You can still access them on a computer, but this eliminates the primary tool for compulsive use. Turn your general-purpose devices into single-purpose tools. Use apps like Freedom to block distracting websites by default, only allowing yourself access during scheduled times. And finally, consider the ultimate act of resistance, dumbing down your smartphone. More and more people are trading their iPhones for basic dumb phones that only handle calls and texts. They report feeling less anxious, more present, and happier. This journey into digital minimalism is not about rejecting technology. It's about rejecting the idea that new is always better, and that convenience is the most important value. It's about remembering that our tools are supposed to serve us, not the other way around. It's a return to a more human way of living, one where we are in control, where our days are shaped by our deepest values, and where we have the space to think, to connect, and to create. It's about being able to say with confidence, because of how I use technology, I'm a better human being than I ever was before. Commentary. As we step back and look at the ideas in digital minimalism, what strikes me most is how deeply humane this book is. In a world that often feels like it's spinning faster and faster, driven by algorithms we don't understand, Cal Newport offers a way to slow down and catch our breath. He gives us permission to be intentional, to choose depth over distraction. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the shift in mindset from "what am I missing out on" to "what am I building?" The default culture of the internet is one of passive consumption. We scroll, we watch, we react. We consume the lives of others, the outrage of the day, the endless stream of content. It leaves us feeling empty because, at the end of the day, we haven't actually done anything. Minimalism is a philosophy of action and creation. It asks you to be the architect of your own life, to decide what truly matters to you and then to use your time and energy to build that life. The joy you get from learning a new song on the guitar, from having a deep conversation with an old friend, or from spending an afternoon in quiet contemplation, these are the rewards that no amount of likes or retweets can ever match. They are real, they are lasting, and they belong to you. The book is also a powerful reminder that our brains are not infinitely flexible. We are biological beings with needs that have been shaped over millions of years. We need solitude. We need real, face-to-face social connection. We need the satisfaction of using our hands to create things. When we ignore these needs, we suffer. Much of the anxiety and unease of modern life comes from this profound mismatch between what we are and how we are living. So, how can you start putting these ideas into practice today, right now? You don't have to throw your smartphone in a river. Start small. First, try this simple experiment this weekend. Pick a 3-hour block of time and leave your phone at home, turned off. Go for a walk, read a book in a park, or just sit and think. Notice the urge to check your phone. Notice how it feels when that urge passes and your mind settles. That's the feeling you're trying to cultivate. Second, pick one person you care about who you usually text with. This week, call them instead. Have a real conversation with no agenda. Just talk. See how different it feels. Finally, think of one small, tangible thing you can create with your hands this month. It could be as simple as trying a new recipe, building a small bookshelf, or planting a garden. Dedicate a few hours to it, and experience the unique pride that comes from making something real. These small acts are the beginning of a revolution, a quiet, personal revolution against the forces of distraction. They are the first steps on the path to a more focused, more intentional, and ultimately, a more human life. That was a summary of Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. We've certainly hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real magic happens when you walk the path yourself. It's in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase resonates in a way you didn't expect. This overview is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your precious time. If anything we've discussed today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning new ideas, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and the world around you. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.